Okay. In terms of stuff, again, deadlines haven't changed. So exam 1, quizzes part 2, deadline is Friday, end of day. Exam 2, quizzes part 3, budget November 16th, end of day. Exam 3, exam 4, quizzes part 4, December 7th, end of day. And exam 5, the exciting final, if you need it, deadline is December 14th at noon. For the paper, draft deadline November 9th, +5 November 14th, emergency deadline November 21st, 50% deadline, respiration December 8th. Also, still don't have power, so if you email me and I'm not here on campus, there won't be anything I can do because I don't have power, don't have internet, phone service, but I think is back to being mostly reliable-ish at this point. So if you email me with something and you don't hear back until like Wednesday, that's why. No idea when the power is going to be back on. I ran through a neighborhood and there's still just trees all through the wires, and I see trucks driving by going other places when other people's power, but my house didn't get destroyed and I didn't die, so I guess that's good. Okay, so now we turn to looking at time travel. And the piece on this is Meeting Yourself, written by me, published originally in LaBossiere's magazine, and then published again in What Don't You Know, so published stuff. And I'm one of the few writers in the readings that's not dead yet.
You ain't trying to get there, are you?
I'm trying to avoid death. Trying to stay away from that. Now, when it comes to travel, no one believes that if you travel far enough, you'll be able to circle around and meet yourself. Because as Buckaroo Banzai said, no matter where you go, there you are. So you can never meet yourself through physical travel. But with time travel, supposedly you could pull off the amazing feat of meeting yourself in person. All you have to do is travel into the future when you're still alive and meet yourself, or travel back into the past and meet yourself. Now, as might be imagined, the notion of time travel creates all kinds of problems and paradoxes. And the most famous paradox of all, of course, is the classic grandfather's paradox, which is this. It's kind of bloodthirsty and psychotic. It's, suppose for some reason you really don't like your grandfather and you want to go back in time and kill them. Now, if time travel is possible, you should be able to do that. But of course, if you succeed in killing your grandfather, you wouldn't exist. So you wouldn't be able to go back in time to kill them. And so that's considered...
Wait a minute. If I go back in time to kill him, I can kill him. But I won't be able to go back in time to be in time. But if I go back in time, I should be able to kill whoever's back there, right?
Right. Yeah, you should be able to go back and do it, because if time travel is possible, you should be able to do that. But of course, if you succeed, you erase yourself from the timeline,
Right.
so you wouldn't exist to go back and do it. And so it creates, a paradox loop, because if you succeed, you can't succeed because there'd be no you to succeed. Now, there have been various attempts to address this, and if you're interested in time travel, and of course the research would involve watching movies like Time Machine and 12 Monkeys and so forth, and the Terminator movies, the good ones, not the bad ones. Now, one way to solve the paradox is to use parallel universes, that you go back and you travel not to your past, but someone else's past. And so you kill someone else's grandfather, the other version of you, so you can succeed, because you kill their grandfather. You don't vanish, because that's not your grandfather, it's just, a grandfather like your grandfather.
Say that again, because you didn't make no sense.
It'd be like, well, one view is that time travel, you can't actually do it. And when you time travel, the view is that what you're doing is you're going to another universe, which is currently at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going back to your 1901, you're traveling to another universe that's
Similar to yours.
Yeah, a natural one. So you go back and you kill somebody,
That grandfather.
that grandfather that's like your grandfather but not
Well,
yours.
still won't do no good for you.
No, it won't.
If I'm hating my grandfather and I go back and kill somebody else, that didn't do me nothing.
But I guess because he's similar enough to your grandfather,
Yeah.
it's still
Well,
satisfactory.
Perhaps.
You could do this, if I go back in time when my grandfather's alive, and I pay somebody to kill him, but then that still create the same paradox as you just said.
Yeah.
But, to me, it seemed to me, it was as if it would only prohibit me from going back to where I was. It will just cause both of us to cease. Because I stopped it at the point of beginning.
Yeah, I mean, other people have said that, yeah, that you would do it, and then you'd vanish after
Right.
doing it. You could succeed, but then you would,
Yeah.
it would take a while for the, like in movies, TV shows, it takes a while for the time to, as a plot device, because the plot needs it. And otherwise, no reason to think that. Another view that's popular among physicists, as opposed to philosophers, and it sounds kind of almost like supernaturally, is that you could go back in time, but you'll never be able to succeed. That you were sort of foreordained to failure. So if you get a rifle and try to shoot them, it will jam, or if you try to like run them over in their car, you'll get like T-boned by another car. So you can go back and try all you want, but you'll never be able to succeed.
Or could you go back and pay somebody else to do it?
No, because then you'd pay them and they would just take off, and not kill them. Or they'd kill you, take them. Yeah, so the claim by the physicists is you just wouldn't be able to succeed. Because you can't change the time. And of course, the good question is, well,
Why would you go back there?
well, how would that work? Because it makes it sound like there's like like a time police or God who makes sure everything works properly. Now, another view, there are many, vast number. There's a short story by Alfred Bester called "The Men Who Killed Muhammad," and so close to blasphemy. But what he says is that when you go back in time and kill people, you don't erase them from time, you start erasing yourself. So the more you change time, eventually you take yourself out of time. So you can go back and kill whoever you want, but it has no effect on them, it only affects your history. If you kill enough people, you just erase yourself from history. Now fortunately, this essay does not require solving any of those paradoxes about homicidal people going back to kill their grandparents. But if you're looking for a paper topic, and like time travel, the grandfather paradox is one that's been looked at for a long time, and there's actually a lot of good, in the sense of good fiction, literature, and movies, and so forth, and shows like Futurama that deal with that problem. And so one potential issue would be, could a person, suitably psychotic, travel back in time and succeed in killing the grandfather? If so, what would happen? And it's all speculative, of course, but again, there's a lot of source material out there that you could use if you're looking for sources, or you can just kind of freewheel it and make stuff up, because why not? Now, this bit of time travel writing was written on the realization that time travel seems to connect to universals, entities that can exist in different places at the same time. And here's why. One of the many weird things about time travel, but one particular one is this. Time travel requires the possibility of multiple location. Now, in the normal course of events, I can only be in one place at one time, aside from being like chopped into pieces, but let's not go into that gruesome place. So if I'm entirely in Tallahassee, in this room, I can't at the same time be entirely in Old Town, Maine, or St. George Island. Now, of course, if you're familiar with like superhero comics, DC and Marvel, they all have characters that can multiply themselves, and that's cheap. So they can kind of do that, but it's not. But it's basically, it'd be like if you were cloned. You're not entirely in different places. They can just kind of split themselves up into different, entities, be in different places at the same time. But in the normal course of events, you can only be in one place at one time.
You said time travel seems to connect to why
Oh, multiple locations. And here's why. If you could travel through time, that could mean that you could be in the same time, but at different places. In fact, it would require it. So for example, if I had a really lame time machine and I could travel back like 5 minutes, I could go back 5 minutes, walk through the door and, wave to myself. So I would be here and I'd also be there. And time travel by its very nature requires that two things can be in different places at the exact same time. Now in the case of meeting yourself, it would mean that you, from the past to the future, would be a certain distance from the you of now. And so you would be multiply located. You'd be here and there. Which of course seems to violate the normal rules of being places.
Question, do you remember when Stewie went back in time to kill, what was his name? I think he said he was like related to Picasso or something, not Picasso. It was a philosopher. I think it was Aristotle. He went back in time to kill Aristotle in order to kill his evil twin. And like he buried himself underground and underneath their future house. The house, how does that work? Because whenever him and Brian would use the time machine, they would disappear completely, and they would leave like little dummy machines to confuse the family if they're still there. So is that like a different theory or?
Oh no, because they could, because if they overlap, I mean, you could go to a time when you're not there, so that would be like not a problem. It's when you're in times when you overlap, like when you go to a time like during your own lifetime or time you've been. Like the show Doctor Who does that. Like we have they're never supposed to meet except of course for the specials where they have like the 2 doctors, the 3 doctors, the 5 doctors, and you have the same person played by different actors at the same different places at the same time. Yeah, so it would be you travel back to a time. So if you travel to a time and you're not there, no problem. But of course, if you could travel in time, you could always travel to a time when you are there. Like if you travel back to 17, if you travel back to somewhere else, you'd be far away, but you'd still be in the same time, just different places. Now, so how can that happen? Well, it's interesting enough, coincidentally enough, the classic problem of universals ties into this. And here's how. The problem of universals, as you might recall from the ancient days of wartime, is the following, actually 2 problems. One is, put in general terms, in virtue of what is an individual, a member of a class or type of things. Symbolically, in virtue of what is individual A, a member of type F. For example, in virtue of what is a cat, a member of the type cats. Now, the other part of it is what individuates things, in virtue of what is a distinct from all other F things. So in virtue of what is this cat, distinct from all other cats. Now the main problem people focus on as the problem of universals is that problem. In virtue of what are individuals or tokens, members of classes or types. Now one answer given is by people who believe in universals. They say that, like we saw with Plato and Aristotle, there are entities called universals, and they can be in many places at the same time. So, universals would seem to allow for time travel, because they are the kind of thing that already, by hypothesis, can be in different places at the same time. So if we're composed of universals, they can already do that. Normally, we're supposed to be particulars, which creates a bit of a problem. But if time travel were possible, you need something capable of multiplication, and universals can already do that. And so one seeming feature of universals is, in theory, is that it does seem to allow for time travel. Because that way we could be, if we're made of universals that can do that, time travel requires that we can do that, so, yeah, the universals. Now, universals, of course, are heresy at best, abominations at second best. So, what if you don't want to embrace the heresy and abominations of universals? Well, all good and enlightened people, of course, embrace what's called trope theory. That's not true. So what is trope theory and why does it have such a stupid name? Because if you go to like Wikipedia and look at the term trope, you'll talk about a lot of other stuff and may mention the metaphysical view. So lousy choice. But it's kind of like stuck there. It's kind of like when a kid gets a really awful name and they're just like stuck with it because it's on the books. And I guess they could change it, but it'd be too much work. Same with like tropes. It's a terrible name, but no one's really gotten around to try. The people have tried things like abstract particulars, which just in a way sounds kind of works. So that's what we call them. So what are these tropey trope things compared to universals?
So what do they describe the tropes as? Mystical beings?
No, they're not mystical at all. They're just tropes. So here's how tropes supposedly differ from universals. In Illustrated, I'll make use of a bag of marbles because everyone loves examples involving bags of marbles. You survey people and say, what kind of examples do you like? People always say bags of marbles. That's not true. And that's what I'm going to start with. So imagine we have a bag of marbles. And there are 6 marbles in it. And let's suppose they're green. Now, and they're round. So if you believe the universals, there would be, it's supposed, imagine they're all the same color of green. If you're making a metaphysical list of what's in the bag, or what's in the box, like in 7, terrifying movie. What's in the box? There'd be one universal green. There'd be one universal shape for the shape of the marbles. And if you can keep on going, like there'd be one universal of marble and so on for all the qualities. But if the marbles all have the exact same qualities, there'd just be one universal that all the marbles have. So for every quality, there'd just be one universal in the bag, so to speak. Now there'd be 6 particulars, namely the 6 marbles. So there'd be 6 marbles and then one universal for each. So if we're just going with color and shape, there would be 8 things in the bag, namely 6 marbles, 1 universal green in different locations, 6 locations, 1 universal shape, also in 6 locations. So with universals, the idea is that those qualities are identical and they're multiply located. It's not like there's like it's not like there's a universal paint bucket and you dip your brush in and paint them so they all have separate green. And this is the weird part of universals. Green is entirely here and entirely here, 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 here. So it's entirely located, not broken up in 6 places. And of course that seems weird because normally stuff can't do that. So it's not like paint over the marbles or there's pieces of green. Literally the entire thing is in each of these places. And that would mean if you had like a metaphysical destruction ray that could destroy anything completely, and you blasted one of the marbles, you would destroy green in the shape, and you would destroy all that green in the universe. So suddenly it would no longer be, all the green would suddenly vanish, which would be kind of weird. So always use your universal destruction ray carefully. Now what about the tropes, trope theorists? Well, what trope theorists do is they have to answer the same question in virtue of what is marble green. The universal theorist says, well, they're green because each one has the same identical green, entirely located in each of these separate places, which is crazy talk. The trope theorists, of course, their crazy talk is this. Instead of identity, they use the notion of resemblance. exact resemblance. So a trope theorist would say, yes, there are qualities. So both of them would say, yep, there are qualities. There is, say, green and shape. But the trope theorist would say, there's not one universal green that they all have. When they were doing their count, they would say there's 6 marbles. They would say there are 6 greens that are, they're exactly resembling but not identical, and 6 shapes, and so on for all the other qualities. So whereas if you're talking about color and shape, the universal theorists would say there are 8 things in the back. 2 universals, 1 for shape, 1 for color, 6 marbles. 6 objects, 6 particulars. The trope theorists would say there's 18 things in the back. 6 exactly resembling greens, 6 exactly resembling shapes, and 6 marbles. So 6 objects and 18 particulars. Because what they say is the green, take like the backpack and this. Imagine that the black color and black color are exactly the same. Universal theorists would say, well, they are the same exactly, that they are identical. The trope theorists would say, well, they're exactly resembling, but they're not identical. Now, of course, the universal theorist says, that exact resemblance is pretty suspicious. That sounds like identity. And of course, the trope theorist says, no. And that's where it goes from there. So that's what trope theory claims. So instead of those crazy universals, you've got crazy tropes. Just pick your crazy, essentially. Now, even though tropes are super cool, of course, and all the cool kids have talked about tropes, they just love tropes. Exactly. I think, whenever Katy Perry does a show, she does this one's for the tropes. And Kanye, he talks about tropes a lot. He's talking about Trump and tropes, troops.
Physicists
Troubles.
will drop on their head when they were babies.
Well, yeah, of course, physicists are terrible. Now, one seeming downside of tropes is this, though, is that they would seem to make time travel impossible. How so? Well, time travel, of course, requires that you be in different places at the same time. But tropes can't do that. They can't be in different places at the same time because they're particulars. They have to be in different, places at different times. So it seemed that time travel would be impossible. So universal theorists could say, I can do time travel, and trope theorists have to say, curses. They seemingly cannot. So if you like time travel, then that would seem to be a reason to reject tropes. But of course, that would be crazy. So how can we save the day for the tropes? Well, fortunately, there was a fellow that came along with really crazy hair and who wore the same type of clothing every day. Not the same clothing, the same type of clothing every day. Our good dead friend, Albert Einstein. And he put forth the theory of relativity, which was, of course, the theory of relativity that everyone likes to talk about, but no one knows what the hell that is, except you can say it's relative. Now, one implication of the theory of relativity is this. There is no sameness of time. How do we know this? Well, what Einstein thought up as he sat in the patent office, not getting paid but not doing his work, he came up with these thought experiments and stuff in which he claimed that if you take something and increase its speed, it changes its relative time. Gravity changes relative time. Now, back in the time he was Einsteining, they really couldn't test that because the effective speed and gravity, well, in the case of speed, it has to be really high speed, and they didn't have stuff that would go fast enough back then. And of course, with gravity, you'd have to get to some place with different gravity, and back when he was Einsteining, that wasn't really practically possible. But, and also you had to measure time really precisely, and clocks weren't super precise. But then, once we developed, being able to get into orbit, we could get to some place with different gravity, namely microgravity. We could have something going really, really fast, and we can make precision atomic clocks. So what they did is they got a precision atomic clock, got a second one, you know, synchronized them, put one on the space shuttle, back when we had space shuttles, put it up in orbit, and it's out of the gravity, well, it's in microgravity, it's going really fast, and then it came back to Earth, and they checked the clocks. And they were like, Einstein was right. The time is different. And so we're all in slightly different, you know, gravity. Like we normally think that the Earth is like constant 1g, but actually there's slight variations in gravity depending on where you are, etc. You not enough to notice. It's not like you're walking along and suddenly like, I could, you know, fall to the floor from your gravity, or you know, you start floating around. And of course, we're all moving at slightly different speeds. You know, a little quicker. And stop.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The time in the atmosphere was any different than it did here.
Yeah, it's time. The difference is time. So I mean, you would, if you brought a watch up, just a normal watch, and you went up in space, you know, for a year, your time, you know, if you had a precision clock, if it wasn't atomically precise, you know, super precise clock, you wouldn't notice it. You wouldn't go, oh my gosh, I got to keep adjusting my time because I'm in space. But the faster you go, the slower, paradoxically in a way, the slower your time goes. Which is, if you're wondering like why, you probably heard people say nothing can go faster than the speed of light. You may have wondered, why is that? Here's why. It has to do with the time thing. Because the faster you go, the slower your time is relative to other stuff. So, for example, suppose here's the Earth, and you get on a really fast spaceship, heading off to space. And the ship is like super fast. Now, what happens is, you notice nothing from your perspective. Everything seems perfectly normal. You don't feel yourself slowing down, because everything's slowing down consistently, so you have no point of reference by which to realize that, you know, as long as you're in the ship. Now, from the standpoint of people on the Earth, if they could look at you, you would seem to be slowing down. And so the faster and faster you go,
The slower it appears that you are going.
yeah, the slower you are going. The faster your ship goes, the slower you go. And again, you would notice this. You would feel yourself slowing down because from your standpoint, everything would still be perfectly normal. Unless you could like somehow, you know, look out at Earth and everything would seem to speed up. Now, because the faster you go, the slower you go, what happens is, at least in theory, is you wouldn't be able to, at a certain point, burn any more fuel or step on the gas anymore because time would stop. So the barrier basically is a time barrier. So you can't go faster than light because you just can't, you wouldn't be able to do that final step. So it's not like, you know, the ship would just blow up or you hit a space wall. It's just that you can never cross that because time would stop. And you wouldn't be able to go, to use an analogy, it's like you're pushing down an accelerator and there is, you know, an object which you can never push past it. Now, if you went really, really, really fast and you came back to Earth and you went fast enough, you'd find that, you know, super, super fast, you'd find that you would have aged less than a person on Earth because of the gravity and the speed. Now, from a practical standpoint, one way they would try to use this is the faster you go, obviously, to get another planet, the less time you'll spend in space. But if you can get going fast enough, time would start slowing down for the crew, so you would actually need less supplies, you know, the journey would seem, you know, from your perspective, it'd be like being able to, like, you know, go on an airplane trip and have kind of like your brain kind of slowed down, so it seemed like it'd be much quicker. Yeah, and so that's why we want to go fast. Now, so what's the implication for this for universals?
Wait a minute, so we can break the sound barrier, but you can't go break the time barrier.
So, well, no, there's some physicists that believe we actually can, but it requires the current best theory, in a way, was kind of stolen from, obviously, sci-fi, where what you can do is generate a bubble around the vessel. What in Star Trek terms, we have what they call like a warp field, and you'd be able to take the ship out of normal space, and then you'd be able to kind of cheat and break the speed of light without breaking it. The other common trick in sci-fi is using what they call jump drives.
Mhm.
And what they do is they open a portal to another dimension where the rules are different. Babylon 5, for example, used the jump gates and jump ships. So the most plausible one is the warp field, although it would require tons of energy, even if it's even possible. Now the impact of this on universals is this. If Einstein is right, and he seems to be, that means there is no same time. So that means nothing can be at different places at the same time because there is no same time. Every time is different.
So, because every time is different, it's just like passing through space, air. You're not in the same place at the same time. So if time travel were possible, it would not that you'll be in the same place at the same time, it's just passing through time.
Yeah, your time, because if you travel back in time, you would not be in the same time as the you there.
Right.
Because you'd be at a different location, so you'd be slightly off in the time. You would not enough to notice. And so if there is,
So it'll be different than passing through time as opposed to being in the same place at the same time.
right, because the reason why you can't be in the same place at different places at the same time is because there is no same time.
That's what I'm saying. So I actually, if this was the time machine, then it's here, but when it takes off, it's no longer here. And it's passing through time. So the time that I was here, I left that point in time to another time. And like you said, there is no same time, so it's not like I'm still here. I just passed through a zone. Now I'm 20 billion light years away, so I'm not the same time. But it's just that when I get ready to come back, because as you said, the faster you go, the slower you go. So when I get ready to come back, it's as if I never left, because I was going so slow and so fast at the same time.
Yeah, because you could time it so you came back. Yeah, you time it so you leave and you come back like the next instant. So you never left. Now, if you came back, if you went forward and then came back earlier before you left in a different place, you would still be in, at least according to relativity, in a different time. Because my time and your time are, we don't notice it because it's so close, but we're not in the same time. Every object is relative time. So if you travel back in time and appeared out in the hallway and came walking in, the you from the future would be in a different location than the you of now,
Right.
but you'd also be not in the same time because there is no same time according to relativity.
So if I came back to a time before, when we get to that right time, would I collide together and become one, or relatively?
Good question. Because in movies, because of plot devices, they often have that. If you, I think it's like the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Time Cop. And so if you like touched yourself, it'd blow up the universe or something. No reason why that would happen, or no reason why. Also, maybe no reason why it wouldn't. But yeah, if you came back in time, it would just be like having a twin that's you. I mean, it wouldn't do anything. Probably wouldn't do anything weird. Touching it. Probably.
But I'm just saying, when the times come together, if I started here and I end up here, I come back to this point. When they come back to this time, will the two of us join together and be one?
Oh, I don't know. I think you'd probably stay separate, because if you build a time machine, say in 20 years, and then come back
2 minutes from now, you would probably still be, I don't think you would merge. Now, when you went back to the future, then they would still be the separate yous.
Well, so you'd never be able to be you again.
No, you'd always be you. There'd just be lots of you scattered.
That's what I'm saying. So if I left this time to go here, when I come back to here, you're saying that there's a different me already there.
Oh, there's a you. You're there.
Yeah, so I could never come back and be the same me that I was, because there's already be a me still there. So now there's 3 me.
Yeah, you can multiply yourself. There's, I wrote one of the essays, paper options deals with this. I wrote, because I was thinking of like writing a sci-fi story of how like if you had like if you were on a planet that's being attacked, and you had like a research outpost for some alien race, and you found like a working time machine, and you only had say like a couple soldiers, and there's a whole army coming. How could you, using a time machine, transform say your sort of token guard of Marines into an army? And a time machine could let you do that, because what you do is you would have your soldiers and have everybody take their equipment and weapons and hop way back in time. Then just keep hopping back further and further in time, and you'd be able to multiply yourself. So you could transform your force of say four people and 10 researchers. You just keep multiplying. You just travel back in time. They go forward, hop in the time machine, keep coming back, and you literally have an army of one person could become an entire army. But it does raise an interesting problem. If during the battle, like someone gets killed, what happens? Yeah, what happens to
That was
everybody?
a movie. Some person was multiplying themselves like that, and they had to kill the one person to kill all of them.
Yeah, if you get the original, I guess, or get the earliest one, then take out all of them. But then, of course, the later ones that know what happened in the original. So, yeah, paradox. So many paradoxes. Yeah. So for the standpoint of tropes, though, you can still have tropes, because if you go back in time, again, like if you go back and your future self in 10 years from now is standing like back there, you're not in the same time, because there is no same time. Now the implication of this is this does allow there to be time travel in tropes, because if there is no same time, nothing can exist in the different places at the same time. And so it's sort of double plus. One plus is you can have time travel in tropes. Also, it puts a stick into the universals, because if you can no longer have same time, different places, then universals can't be, because universals require the same thing being different places at the same time, but there is no same time. So there could be no universals.
I'm still stuck on what is a trope.
Oh, a trope is just a property, because the main thing is like with universals, like Plato has, that is like, why are we all humans? Plato would say, well, there is one form of human, and we all instantiate that form. One form, multiple instances. It's multiply located. For Aristotle, it's, you got the form of human. It's not in Plato's heaven, but it's the same form everywhere. There's one form. Now, the trope theorist says multiplication is crazy. So you don't have one form of human. You have human as a quality, and everybody's humanity is resembling, but not identical. And so the only difference between the two is universals. The universal theory is the same exact thing in multiple locations. Same entity existing in different places at the same time. Trope theory says, yeah, you have properties, but they can't do that. They have to exist. They can't exist in different places at the same time.
The individual replications.
Yeah. So your humanity and my humanity are not identical, they're exactly resembling, the trope theorist. Whereas Plato would say, there's the form of human, and we both participate in it. Aristotle would say we both have the form of human, not in the Platonic heaven, but here. And so the big difference is whether you accept one thing can be in many places at the same time, or whether you accept that one thing can only be in one place at a time. And relativity says there is no same time, so that would seem to get rid of universals and allow time traveling tropes. And since I consider universals the deadliest of enemies, it's a double win for me. And I like time travel, double win for me.
If you could time travel, where would you go?
I would go, well, I'd do the obvious thing. I'd go to the future, find out all the solutions. I'd find like all the solutions to problems and then bring it back. And then the paradox would destroy the world. And I go, well, and then the closing thing would be, and it'd be like the Twilight Zone, and trying to save the world. Dr. LaBossiere has destroyed the world. Next time on Twilight Zone.
So would you go gather this information for monetary purposes? Or?
Nope. What I would do, and I thought this through, because, you know, nerd-tastic. I would go and get things like cures for cancer, you know, fusion power, and just distribute it everywhere. You know, just get it, send it out to as many sources as I could as quickly as possible before people came to kill me, and then go into hiding for a while.
Oh, so you would go into exile?
Well, because they probably somebody would come and try to kill me. That's what happens.
Go to a place. I mean, your time travel. You can view. You can have the universe at your disposal.
Oh, if I could do it all, do it anytime. Oh God, yeah, I just traveled to cool. I'd go to all the coolest.
I mean, you're a time travel. Why would you go in exile and somebody trying to kill you?
Oh, if I could do it multiple times.
Just.
Oh, if I could travel anywhere, yeah, I'd bring back lots of good stuff, you know, and then I would go find the coolest place in time and just stay there. And hopefully it's not now, because that would be sad. That would be so sad.
So you want to do scientific fiction as a writer?
Well, I've sold only stuff. I've never been able to sell short stories. Oh, I have 100%. Oh, I had one accepted, but then they fired the editor, and they said they weren't going to publish any of the stuff that the editor accepted. And I was like, I got my acceptance letter, then like a month later, like, you know, we're not publishing any of this. I was like, no.
But you ain't trying to go to another publisher?
Oh, I went through a phase in the 90s when I wrote tons of stuff. All failures, with a big F for failure. But then, you know, I started writing philosophy with a big S for success. Yeah, I mean, it was weird, because you think if you're a good writer, you know, publish a writer like in one area, that you could just do it everywhere, but it's, you know, it's kind of weird. Also, it seems kind of random, because if you think of like writers who are super famous, and you compare their works to writers who are not super famous, there are writers who are incredibly good, but are not super, you know, they're writers that you've never heard of, but if you actually take the time to find their stuff and read it, you'd say, God, this is super good. Why isn't this person super famous? And it's all random, just a lot of luck.
I think it's a matter of money and being able to get your name out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you can get on like an NPR, like you get on a show, then people hear about it, they buy your book, and then they hear about you, and you can sell books. Well, nothing with metaphysics. One example is J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter fame. She wondered, she asked the classic question, are people buying my books because of the quality of my writing, or did I just like out and get famous? So she wrote a series of books and put them out there under a pseudonym. How did they sell? They didn't. And then someone leaked that she was the author, and suddenly they were selling like mad. No change to the books, but now people knew that so-and-so was J.K. Rowling, so the sales went up. Because it was all a matter of quality, and her sales are based on the quality of her writing, then those books should sell just as well. So.
Excuse me, please.
Yeah, so fame is a fickle thing. Okay, now we turn to another work by me also, Substances and Substrata. Now, this takes us again into the land of the craziness of tropes. Now, if you buy tropes or universals, to be fair to the crazy universal theorists, fundamental question is this: do you just have universals or tropes, or do you have to have something that they kind of like stick to? And we talked earlier about the notion of substances and substrata. And I gave the illustration, if you take, well, I'll use the bottle. The bottle has various qualities, steel, color, certain volume, density, mass, etc. And we know that I can't just like extract the color, the shape, the volume, that we always find qualities together. You can see blue things, but you never just walk into a puddle of blue. And people wonder why. And so they came up with this idea of substrata, that there must be something, like a Mr. Potato Head, into which are stuck the qualities, the properties. Now, other people said that substrata stuff is crazy talk, so why not just have we believe in qualities, why not just have qualities? Why have substrata? So whenever you have a theory that accepts properties, be they universals or tropes, the next question is, do you accept something else that these properties like stick to, metaphorically speaking? Now, my view is, in addition to like accepting tropes, that you also need substrata. But there are fellow brother and sister trope theorists who accept what's called a bundle theory. And here's the difference. If you believe in substrata, then you would believe, again, like in Mr. Potato Head, that the qualities are kind of like metaphorically stuck in it. If you don't believe in substrata, you believe the qualities form what are called bundles, that they somehow all stick together to form stuff. So if you were a substrata theorist, you'd say that bottle consists of one substrata and all the qualities like stuck to it. If you believe in bundles, you would say that bottle is all its qualities and there's no mysterious substrata.
So in other words, the bottle is itself altogether.
Yeah, all the qualities. There's no crazy substrata. Now, to illustrate the difference briefly, in the remaining 1 minute, we can go back to my bag of marbles. If you're a substrata theorist and a trope theorist, you would say there's 6 green tropes, 6 shapes, 6 marbles, and if you were a substrata theorist, you would say there are also 6 substrata in there. Now, if you're a bundle theorist, you don't need the substrata. So one advantage, big advantage of the bundle theory is you have one less metaphysical entity. You don't need the substrata. And going back to the ancient days, we talked about methods, by Occam's razor, that is an advantage. So the battle between trope substrata and trope bundle is essentially about that fight. You pay, is it worth the price to have the substrata? Does it do enough good stuff, solve enough problems to make it worth the price? Or does the economy of the bundle theory, is that better? So it basically comes down to economic battle, which gives you the most stuff for the least cost.
Which one man was that said less is better?
Nobody says that. Less is more.
Less is better.